In 2002, a movie was released that pretty much cemented the idea of the VHS tape format in our heads forever. An American remake of a Japanese film from 1998 that truly scarred a generation of kids around the world who will never look at a well the same way again. A marketing campaign as successful as the Blair Witch Project, people everywhere were frightened about a cursed tape that kills. Filled with seemingly unrelated, disturbing images, the only thing more scary than someone calling your phone is hearing those two haunting words, 7 days. Eventually spawning 2 sequels. I want to know, does the film hold up? Was it really that scary 20 plus years ago? It's time to launch on this expedition of the treacherous task as we dive in to talk about every franchise ever! Episode 3, The Ring franchise. Hello friends, and welcome to Every Franchise Ever, where I, Bryan Starr, am attempting to watch, review, and rank the movies of every franchise ever. If you're just joining us, this is episode 3. We just launched in the very beginning of October, and to celebrate Spooky Month, every franchise is from the horror genre. We're going above and beyond by releasing a new episode just about every other day so that this launch can really get to as many people as possible. But don't worry, this podcast is not just about horror. It is called Every Franchise for a reason. I'm just a big fan of this Halloween season, so I figured let's set the mood and start off with a scare. You can follow along by watching and listening on YouTube and Spotify, with more platforms coming very soon. I promise I'm working on it. And if you can't keep up with our full episodes, I've also turned this idea into a short form series that you can watch on my TikTok and Instagram, but I'm solely focusing on ranking the movies in each franchise. But you know, this is the podcast. This is where the meat is. I want to do more than just ranking, and in this episode, I'm actually going to take a slightly different approach than what I've done before. So, let's chill with the yapping and get started talking about Ring 1 and 2, Rings, and as a bonus, the original Japanese film, Ringu.
Beware, there will be spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie yet, what are you doing here? Oh well, you've been warned.
Right here from the start, I want to let you know that my main focus when it comes to breaking down each movie's plot will be for The Ring. I'm going to put more emphasis in telling you the story of this movie because it shook my generation when it came out. If for whatever reason you don't know, the very basic logline of the film is there is a cursed VHS tape that people are watching, and after about a minute and a half, the video turns off, the phone rings, and you hear someone whispering on the other side the phrase, 7 days, meaning you have 7 days before you die. Now, we're eventually going to get into it. There is a way to stop that from happening, but I want to tell you a story from my personal experience with this film. And even when I was watching it again for this podcast, something pretty insane happened. So here we go. I've gone on record plenty of times letting people know that I did not do well with horror growing up. In fact, I still don't. I'm absolutely a baby, except I love it. I hate it, but I love it. I don't know. But yeah, I was scarred watching a few things I shouldn't have. And there was a period in my life of like 15, 20 years where I barely watched horror movies. So naturally, when The Ring came out, of course, I didn't see it in theaters. But then it came out to rent. Now, I had a big group of friends where I grew up. We loved watching movies together. And even though I hadn't started collecting the movies just yet, I was in the very beginning stages of wanting to be a filmmaker. And so, yeah, all I wanted to do was just watch movies with friends. There were a few houses throughout the neighborhood, and it just depended on who rented what, and that's where we would go, and we would watch a movie. And that's when we all got the call to go to this person's house to watch the new scary movie, The Ring. Again, I don't do well with horror, but I like hanging out with my friends, so I went anyways. And we put the movie in, VHS from the rental store, right? We put the movie in, And immediately the cursed video starts playing. I could not get through that video. I couldn't do it. I was grossed out, but I was also just very scared by the unsettling images. And so as it's playing, I get up and I say, sorry guys, I'm out. And I chicken out. I walk home. This is like the middle of the night. All right. No one is out at this point. It's just me walking home. And what do I see in someone's random backyard that I'm cutting through to get to my house? A well. Just a natural well. Unreal. But yeah, I chickened out. I could not watch that movie, and I didn't for another 15 years when I was finally convinced to watch it for the first time. And of course, I absolutely loved it. Now, that was maybe 7 years ago or so. So I hadn't watched it until I was preparing for this podcast. And here's the thing. The story that I just told you, if you know the movie very well, you're probably thinking to yourself, you're lying. That's not how the movie begins. I've told this story to a lot of people. I walked out because I was too scared of watching the cursed video. Except when I go to play the movie to watch it for the podcast, it does not begin with the cursed video. And that's just true all the time. If you saw it in theaters, it does not begin with the cursed video. If you press play on any platform, it just begins with the girls talking. So what did I experience? Because I have very vivid memories of being scared and walking out and chickening out. And so I finally figured it out. I did my own investigative journalism and realized that every copy of the VHS, all right, remember we rented it on VHS. Every copy of the VHS that came out at that time immediately begins with the cursed video. And after the video ends, it cuts to black and you hear a phone ringing. And I just think that's brilliant. And then the movie, plays from there. This is a VHS, right? You can't pick like special features. You can't pick it to start the cursed video, which we don't even see until 20 minutes into the movie. So that's what happened. Like the timing of all of that to happen was just brilliant to me. And I have to ask anyone who's listening, did you have a similar experience at all? Because I'm trying to figure out. I mean, this really messed with a lot of people, and somehow it got to me, even though I didn't even watch the movie when it first came out. It still affected me in some way. As I said earlier, we are going to talk about the American Ring franchise. I definitely went into this wanting to do the entire the entire Ring franchise. But that's when I realized there's 9 movies, and there's also 2 television series, 8 manga adaptations based on the 6 novels that everything is based on, 2 video games, there's even a Korean remake. So to keep it simple for now, instead of doing all of that, we're just going to also add on Ringu as a bonus. And I'm just going to kind of talk about the differences between the American version and the original Japanese version. But starting off, let's get into The Ring, which, if you didn't know, does not start with the cursed video, but instead begins with 2 friends hanging out. And by the way, if you forgot, directed by Gore Verbinski of the Pirates of the Caribbean fame, and music by Hans Zimmer, who needs no further introduction. I mean, we have a powerhouse team behind this one. So yes, let's begin. The girls are talking about this story that's been going around about a cursed videotape. And if you watch it, you get a phone call that tells you you have 7 days until you die. And what I do appreciate about this movie is we just immediately get into the problem. I really, really love that. So one of the girls freaks out because she did see that video. And this is her 7th night. And sure enough, she dies. The legend is real. The rumor is true. We're introduced to our lead character, Naomi Watts, but her name is Rachel. The girl who died in the beginning of the movie was her niece. And Rachel is an investigative journalist. And so she does what she does. and she decides to figure out what the heck is going on. She figures out where her niece saw the video and goes there, and it's kind of this random inn in the mountains. And she even gets lucky enough to find the VHS tape. She gives it a watch right there in the cabin. And this, finally, is when we get to see the full minute and a half cursed video. And sure enough, when the video is over, the phone rings, and she is simply told 7 days. A whisper from an unknown source. She takes the videotape back home and partners up with her ex-husband, who has the kind of type of job, who has all of this like equipment to figure out what's happening on this tape. And they're able to watch it frame by frame and discover a connection with a lady that we see a few times. She's the one that's brushing her hair. It turns out she died jumping off a cliff, which is also a clip in that video. She jumps off a cliff because a bunch of horses she was training drowned themselves. A little mysterious, but they decide to investigate further. We do have a quick little moment of despair because her son, his name is Aiden, somehow accidentally watches the cursed video. Accidentally. Which means not only is Rachel pressed for time for her own fate, she's got her own 7-day timeline. Now her son does as well. So I do appreciate that because that means that she's really got to figure this out immediately. Rachel heads out to investigate the death of this woman seen on the video, and she gets to a farmlands where these horses were being trained and finds the lady's widow, played by Brian Cox, who just kills it in this role. It's at this location where we are seeing very similar landmarks and imagery. Things that we see in the cursed video are popping up in real life, so clearly Rachel is on to something. This is when we discover that the lady that is in the video and Brian Cox have adopted a daughter named Samara. And they're having trouble with her. They send her to get psychiatric care, and it's at this psychiatric hospital where we discover a video of Samara, and we learn that she has some sort of psychic powers. And part of this power is to project images from her mind into other people's minds and animals, or even onto physical items. This essentially is what actually makes her adopted mother go crazy and jump off a cliff. But also, this is how the horses drowns. But then, of course, the big reveal or spoiler, I don't know. But the big thing is, this is kind of how the VHS is created. We learned that the adopted parents abused Samara. Filled with guilt and fear, the adopted father, Brian Cox, electrocutes himself, kills himself. And then we see Rachel and her ex-husband finding a makeshift child's room tucked in the loft of the barn so that, the parents could hide from her, essentially. Just awful. But it's in this room, we find a burned image of a tree behind the wallpaper. A tree that Rachel has seen before at what we all thought was just a random inn in the mountains. Which of course makes sense. It's where the VHS was created. Samara must be there. And that's where they discover a well underneath the floorboards of one of the cabins. Rachel actually gets into the well. I think she falls in. And then this is when we get this kind of psychic connection and vision. And we see that not only was Samara abused and treated terribly by her adopted parents, her adopted mother pushed her into the well, trying to kill her. Except, you don't really get killed being thrown into a well, apparently. There's water at the bottom. I can see that breaking her fall. So how long would you survive if you didn't die immediately? The answer, 7 days. Samara's body, turns out, is still at the bottom of the well, pretty much decomposed. And when Rachel is finally rescued out of that well, they bring Samara's body out and they bury it properly. And finally, the issue is over, the conflict is done, At least that's what we think, and this is something that I really love about this movie, and kind of tricking us into thinking that Samara is done. However, she's not. She's actually been freed from her prison in the well, and she's just getting started. Rachel's ex-husband, who of course has seen the video, he's in his loft, and his TV turns on, and we see the well that we see from the cursed video, except now Samara, who's free, is climbing out of that well. Not only is she climbing out of the well, she's climbing through his TV in the real world and kills the ex-husband. But how did he die and Rachel be spared? And it all boils down to the fact that Rachel made a copy of the VHS, gave it to her ex-husband, and made him watch it, theoretically passing the curse person to person, potentially, letting Samara just kill forever. The movie ends with Rachel making a copy for her son, who asks, what's going to happen to the person who watches his copy? And even though Rachel doesn't answer, we know what's going to happen. Except not immediately, because the movie is over. To me, this movie absolutely holds up. And thankfully, watching it for the podcast, I had forgotten so much, so I was just eating it up again. I'm a big fan of the mystery sort of investigation storyline. Obviously, dealing with VHS tapes is a sign of its time, but it still doesn't feel dated. And I'm sure that's easy for me to say. I grew up in that era, but no part of me is watching this movie and thinking to myself, oof, we need a remake of this. However, in 2005, they decided we did need a sequel. And fun fact about the sequel is that it's directed by the director of the original Japanese Ringu film, Hideo Nakata, and I so apologize if I'm getting that wrong. Truly, I tried to figure it out, and I heard so many different ways, so hopefully that was good. But yes, he not only directed Ringu, but also Ringu 2. So he's essentially remaking his own movie by making the American version of The Ring 2. Unfortunately, studios got in the way, and after making this movie, vowed to never make an American film again. And honestly, I don't blame him, because Ring 2 is a mess. Let's get into it. Ring 2 is set 6 months after the events of the first film, and Samara is wreaking havoc because more and more people are seeing this video, but it seems that it's caught on that people know now to make a copy and have someone else watch it before your 7 days is up. Rachel has moved away, but somehow is back in the mess because she's investigating the death of the boy who we see in the opening scene. And this is how Samara finds Rachel, because apparently Rachel could hide from her. And before I get any further into the movie, just know there's a lot going on here that seems to contradict things happening in the first film. We're not entirely sure what the exact rules are of anything, so buckle up. We'll try and get through this quickly. So not only has Samara found Rachel, Samara's also messing with Rachel's son, Aiden, who has bruises all over him, and he's starting to get sick. There's this whole scene with a wild deer, and if you're confused by that sentence, try watching the movie. But I believe Rachel is realizing that somehow Samara is possessing Aiden's body. There's a sequence where Aiden is getting sick and potentially developing hypothermia, and Rachel tries to give him a warm bath, except, being possessed by Samara, Aiden freaks out because Samara, she has a history with water, and she's trying to not get him in the bath. He doesn't want to go in. He's freaking out. Clearly something is wrong. So Rachel takes her son to the hospital, where they believe Rachel is actually abusing Aiden because of the bruises all over his body, like a form of Munchausen by proxy. They have to keep him, and Rachel, she's spiraling. She has no idea what to do, so instead of getting help, she decides to further investigate Samara's life. This is when we discover Samara's birth mother, played by Sissy Spacek. She is at a psychiatric hospital, still alive. And the reason she was there in the first place is because she was trying to drown Samara as a baby. This poor girl cannot get away from people trying to drown her. By the way, side note, fun fact, in the unrated version of the movie, when they do a flashback of Evelyn, Samara's birth mother, trying to drown Samara as a baby, Evelyn is played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, famously, Ramona Flowers from Scott Pilgrim. That's actually her first role in a movie, which is cool. But it's only the unrated version. But yeah, she's there. Meanwhile, Aiden apparently kills a doctor and runs away, escaping the hospital. Rachel finds him back at her place and realizes Aiden is truly fully possessed by Samara, hence the killing the doctor thing. And through a dream, it's just goofy what I'm saying is just goofy. But through a dream later that night, the real Aiden tells her to try and drown Samara. And this actually works. Even though it's a tough watch because Rachel is knowingly drowning her son. But it does work. Aiden does not die. Samara is released from Aiden's body. And Samara's back in the TV and somehow pulls Rachel into the TV, into the land of the cursed video. So we are in the TV. It's kind of black and whitish. This one's a mess. It's all over the place. But yeah, we're here. We're in the TV land. Somehow we get back into the well, and Rachel is able to climb out, even though Samara couldn't. Okay, but Rachel gets out of the well and traps Samara back into the well. And the only way to be free of this TV world is to jump off the cliff, the same cliff that Samara's adopted mom jumped off of. But this, snaps her back into the real world, and she's able to live at peace with her son. And as you can see, we've completely lost the plot. Yes, this movie turned into a full-on investigation like the first film, but if you were ever enticed by the whole 7 days deadline and VHS tapes being passed on from one person to another, consider yourself disappointed, because this one fully focuses on even more elaborate backstory of Samara. Even though it did well financially, it sort of makes sense why it took 12 years to make another follow-up film. It just really isn't that great. But sure enough, there is a third film, simply titled Rings, that came out in 2017, and one of the writers of the film is Akiva Goldsman, a name I only recognize because it's attached to so many bad movies, including famously terrible 1997's Batman and Robin. So needless to say, my expectations were rock bottom. Rings begins just like the other two films, where people are talking about a cursed video, and of course someone saw it, except, these people are on an airplane, and Samara, to kill, crawls through the pilot's monitors in the cockpit. And it was at this moment I realized this movie sucks. Or at least it's going to. A few years later in the movie, a professor named Gabriel, played by Johnny Galecki, coincidentally purchases the VCR from the guy who got killed in the airplane. And you're not going to believe what's inside that VCR. Yeah, so of course Gabriel sees the cursed video. And then we move on to our main characters. Our lead, Julia, sees her boyfriend off to college, and time passes by and things aren't looking good because her boyfriend seems to be ghosting her. And so Julia heads to the college, and this is where we get a whiplash of a story reveal, because remember Professor Gabriel? He's running an experiment with his students. This is where you need a key to get to the 7th floor of a random building where a whole mess of students have gathered, and they call themselves the Sevens. Essentially, they are creating a pyramid scheme when it comes to surviving the cursed video. I don't know how he did it, but Gabriel somehow figured out that if you make a copy and make someone else watch it, you're saved. But essentially, this is what's happening, except on a larger scale. And he's doing this because he wants to study it further and try and understand what is going on in a natural, worldly explanation. It's a whole crazy system. It looks like it's hackers meets Wolf of Wall Street up in there. All right, it's nuts, especially when it comes to how organized they are and making sure that people always have someone to watch the video. Breaking the sevens further away from the curse. So we eventually get to the point where Julia finds her boyfriend, who has been ghosting her because he's so deep into the experiment. He's scared. He doesn't want to involve her. But too late, because the boyfriend had hours left of his 7-day deadline, and so she watches the video for him. Except something is weird with her copy. Oh, and by the way, copies are digital now. All right, VHS, get out of here. We got digital files. We can copy and paste and make everybody watch this. So Julia watches the video. Her video is a little weird. And also, when she gets the phone call, she gets a burn on her hands. This has not happened before. Also, ×2, the digital copy not only includes additional images that Professor Gabriel has never seen before, but it cannot be copied. They are trying their best to copy paste because, she has to survive, right? So they have to copy it and give it to someone else to watch. So now we are locked in to the 7-day deadline. And even though we were in new territory with the whole sevens aspect of things, unfortunately, we merely fall right back into investigation mode from number 1 and 2 because Julia needs to survive, and the only way to do it is by fully getting rid of Samara's body and cremating the remains. They actually figure out where she was officially buried, but then realize that her unmarked tomb is empty, and that's when we're introduced to a blind man who told them that Samara's body was buried elsewhere by a priest due to a flood because Samara can't escape the water, apparently. Julia and her boyfriend are heading to where Samara was reburied, except they are stopped because of a car crash. And it's at this car crash where Gabriel is and has died. And seemingly he was on his way to warn them about the mark on Julia's hand. On Julia's cursed video, there were some additional images, as I said, and we are seeing those images. And one of them is a church where, after a lot of discovery, it is discovered that Samara's birth mother, Evelyn, had been imprisoned underneath the bell tower and was impregnated against her will by the same priest who was in charge of Samara's body during the flood. But not only is the priest Samara's father, it turns out the priest is also the blind man. And he has purposefully blinded himself so that he can never be killed by Samara. It also turns out that he had Samara's remains this whole time, and he's doing his best to stop Julia from cremating the remains. Samara can apparently come out of any screen ever, as we saw with the airplane, and she does this through Julia's phone, just so that she can cure the priest's blindness. And now he can see Samara, and she kills him. Julia and her boyfriend cremate Samara's remains and head back home, and everything's fine. But what about the thing that was burned into Julia's hands? What is this? It's Braille. And before we see the translation, we realize that Julia has fully been possessed by Samara because cremating didn't stop her. It unleashed her even further. And through this added power, she's able to send a copy of Julia's cursed video to every single one of her contacts through the internet. And it is when we see the Braille on her hand finally being translated that it all makes sense. The Braille translates to rebirth. Julia is no more. Samara is here to stay. Okay. Yeah, Rings is a bit of a mess. But I do like that they tried some new things. But honestly, by the time I'm done with this American franchise, I'm so exhausted learning every single tiny detail that we can get on Samara's history and family lineage that I don't think I really care that much anymore. We have exhausted every bit of detail that can connect to her in some way. And there you have it. That's the American Ring franchise and my attempts of a segue to talk about Ringu, the original Japanese film. And I've got to say, even though it's not entirely different compared to the American version, it's different enough to be its own thing. Let me explain. The basic premise of Ring and Ringu are similar. A girl dies in the beginning because it was the seventh day, and she watched the tape. Our lead is a journalist who has a son and works with her ex-husband to solve what's going on. The Samara character, Sadako, was killed in a well, but has the power to project her anger into a cursed video that allows her to escape her prison, through the TV and kill. The differences are minor but major at the same time, and so I just want to talk about a few as well as my feelings about the film overall. You are not told 7 days on the phone after you watch the video. In fact, there's only one place where you hear the phone ring, and it's at the cabin that was built over top of the well. The phone does ring, but all you hear is the kind of screeching, kind of background noise / music of the ominous, cursed video, right? The only reason our lead knows she has 7 days is because that's just how long it was between her niece seeing the film and dying. So there you go. The cursed tape itself barely shows anything, and it certainly doesn't show clues that answer every single detail. But there is one major clue, and that's we clearly see Sadako's mother as she brushes her hair. She's the lady in the mirror. And yes, I said Sadako's mother. In this film, there's no adoptive parents storyline, but Sadako's mother also has psychic abilities. In fact, our lead's ex-husband as well has the same abilities, somewhat. And this gets us into major differences between the movies. Whereas the American version only has Samara with any sort of ESP powers, Ringu leans more into the supernatural aspect of things. It's not just one person who can do anything like this. There's even moments when our lead shares visions with her ex-husband. And because in this world people have these strong abilities, a prolific doctor has decided to run tests on Sadako's mother. They have an affair, and Sadako is born. And she also has her mother's abilities, but they're stronger, bit cursed, even more evil. During a demonstration of the mother's abilities to the press, Sadako kills a journalist. And then keep in mind, this is pre-Vengeful Spirit era Sadako. This is pre-Well Sadako. And in one final difference and major reveal is that it is the doctor who pushes Sadako into the well, trying to kill her. I bring up all of these differences because the tone of the film seems completely different than the American version, which relies on just trying to be scary. Whereas Ringu seems more like a drama with dread all throughout. There are multiple times where I think a jump scare could be used effectively in this film, but instead it's silence that fills the air. For instance, there's a moment we see Sadako in the reflection of the TV, but there's no crazy sounds, there's no jump scare, there's nothing. It's just terrifying, knowing that at any moment Sadako could just be there. And let me tell you what, the big difference between Ringu and The Ring is our hand is not held in this film. It took me until like the third act for me to realize the ex-husband actually had psychic powers. It's fully hinted at, though. Within the first few minutes of meeting him, it is fully hinted that he knows something is up. And I just love that. I blame seeing the American version first because my expectations of characters blinded me at times, for sure. But maybe that's why I liked the film so much. It was the same but different, and that difference might affect how I feel about today's episode. And this, of course, brings us to the moment we are all waiting for. How would I rank the 4 films of the Ring franchise that we're talking about? This one might shock you. It certainly shocked me once I fully locked it in, so let's get right to it. It's time for the ranking. By the way, our first episode where we are ranking more than 3 movies, so that is exciting. I cannot imagine what this is going to look like when I have to double that or triple it. But for now, all we have to do is worry about 4th place, and I cannot believe what I'm about to do. I thought really hard about it, and I feel good about it. But in 4th place, it's The Ring 2. I know, it makes no sense, but it all kind of boils down to 2 main things. And one is simply, I watched Ringu, directed by the same person who directed Ring 2. And his version of Ring 2 as well. And so I fully blame the studios for that mess. It's a lot of the same things that keep happening. There's a lot of contradicting previously established rules. And for that, the studio deserves a slap on the wrist. And that slap is placing this movie in last place. All right, next, in 3rd position, I cannot believe I'm doing this. You saw what was happening while I was reading the plot of the movie. But here we go. In 3rd place, I am placing Rings. And by the way, if you're watching the podcast, I'm actually showing the movies because I have them in my collection. And you could just tell by looking at the overly digital poster for this movie. It's a mess. But yes, I am putting Rings in 3rd, and it takes edge over Ring 2 simply because it went back to focus on the cursed video and the panic of the 7 days deadline. Listen, there's a lot of things that I hate about this movie, but bringing back that aspect, for me, wins over, despite really craving that this story kind of just lives outside of the digital world. But yes, there you go. Rings is in 3rd place. Now, not until I saw Ringu did I think I would be doing this, but I am placing The Ring in 2nd place. And again, if you're watching, this is a beautiful Blu-ray steelbook where the slipcover of the movie is a VHS. You pull the slipcover off, it says 7 days. Oh, it's great. But if you're just listening, I'm sorry. Let's get back to it. Here's the thing. Let me be clear. I love The Ring. It's so much fun. I love the mystery. I love how things are being solved. I love Samara in this one. And a big difference between Ring and Ringu is that in The Ring, water actually appears anytime Samara is around. That, I think, just kind of brings the creepiness factor up a level. But for now, I do have it in 2nd place because clearly there's only a number 1, and it is the first one, the 1998 film Ringu. I genuinely wish I saw this movie first. Even though I knew, some things that were going to happen, I still feel like this was a completely different movie. The tension that's built from silence, the feeling that Sadako could be anywhere, the lean into the supernatural without taking things over the top. I almost believe everything that happens. It's clear this film is a step above the rest, and that's why I've placed it at number 1. Locked in, that is the official American franchise with one of the Japanese films ranked. And this, of course, brings us to the end of episode 3, and I gotta say, I'm already excited about how different these rankings are going to be moving forward. Obviously, with some of the franchise, it's going to be obvious what's in first, second, third, and so on. But I love when things like this happens that completely shakes up the game. It completely throws me off guard as well, and maybe some of you. And so what I would really love to know is, what do you think? Do you agree? Is yours completely different? I imagine future franchises it's going to get crazier, but this one makes sense to me. And so yeah, I'm just excited. I hope you are too. I truly hope you're getting a kick out of this. And if you are, I would love to hear about it from you in the comments. You know, whether you're on YouTube, and if you didn't know Spotify, you can actually comment on people's podcasts, which is a lot of fun. As of recording, I can't confirm the podcast has been released to other platforms, but I'm working on it, and hopefully I can make that announcement in the next episode. By the way, please consider supporting the podcast by just simply following either on YouTube, subscribing to my YouTube, or following on Spotify so that you know when new episodes are being released. But also, you can support by becoming a member on my Patreon or Ko-fi. It is $3 a month, and you get to help decide future franchises. You also get a shout out at the end of each video. And more importantly, you get to help this concept live forever. But as always, simply just listening, watching, sharing, commenting, that is amazing support. And for the billionth time, I say thank you. Thank you for being here. It truly means the world to me. Episode 4 comes out in a few days. It's our biggest franchise ever. 6 films spanning 25 years where everything happens for a reason as we gather our nostalgia and finally claim the official ranking of the Final Destination franchise. But until then, for now, I've been Bryan, thanking you for joining me on this journey as we attempt what no sane person has done before, and that's, of course, to talk about every franchise ever.